Based in Chicago, Illinois, Letters to Santa provides direct assistance to families facing urgent financial hardship. They organize live fundraising events featuring legendary musicians, comedians, and improvisers. Their operating budget is paid for by benefactors, a small group of donors committed to covering their administrative costs so that 100% of all public donations received are used in program initiatives. Letters to Santa partners with other nonprofit organizations to identify economically disadvantaged families who are then given the opportunity to write letters addressing 3 questions. If you could receive any gift for you and your family this holiday season, what would it be? If you had one chance to tell your story to someone who wants to answer your letter, what would you share? If your letter is answered, how would it transform your life? Letters to Santa respond to every letter, surprising families on their doorsteps with armloads of gift requests, typically warm clothing or beds for their children, plus food, toys, household necessities, a computer for every child, a tablet for the letter writer, and an unconditional financial gift of $10,000 for ongoing expenses. No strings attached. Make a donation to Letters to Santa today at letterscharity.org.
Hello, fellow Creative Control listeners. My name is Mac Cameron. I live in Toronto, and I have been listening to Creative Control with Vish Khanna since episode 119. That featured all 5 members of one of my favorite bands, Constantines. I listened backwards from there and then forwards, and I know it sounds, over the top or cliche, but finding the show changed the course of my life. It inspired me to pursue a career in radio and to do what I can to support the arts in my community and across the country. So I give to Creative Control because I feel like I owe the show and Vish for helping me figure out what the hell to do with my life. Beyond that, I give to Creative Control because I think independent media, especially insightful, entertaining, thoughtful, and thorough independent media, is something that is worth paying for. What I appreciate about Creative Control is Vish's ability to treat Canadian artists, or any artist for that matter, with the seriousness and appreciation he would any other artist. His excellent rapport with people like Steve Albini and the members of Fugazi and Stephen Malcolmus and others have earned him international appreciation. However, it's his trove of interviews with what I consider to be the most exciting generation of Canadian musicians, conducted out of genuine passion and interest, that makes this show so special. I think it is an archive of some really exciting music that is way, way underreported on and appreciated. That's why I contribute to Creative Control with Vish Khanna, and I hope you will do the same.
To make your flexible monthly donation to Creative Control, please visit patreon.com/Creative Control today. I'm Vish's wife, and I will love him no matter what you do. And now he has me on the record saying that. Creative Control with Vish Khanna.
Tom Mullen is a podcast host and music business veteran who currently calls Los Angeles, California, home. In his past, Mullen has worked for small and massive record labels, often in the realm of storytelling, and promoting new and archival releases by the likes of Bob Dylan, The Clash, Jeff Buckley, and Miles Davis, among others. Since 2007, Mullen has spearheaded Washed Up Emo, a web hub celebrating the musical genre by chronicling conversations and work by bands in that punk community. Initiated as a modest but soon rather popular DJ night, Washed Up now includes Mullen's successful podcast and book series, which connect less celebrated but essential artists with their loyal and loving fans. Initiated as modest but soon rather popular DJ nights, Washed Up Emo now includes Mullen's successful podcast and book series, which connect less celebrated but essential artists with their loyal and loving fans. Tom and I were recently connected by Steve Holmes from American Football, and then we each recorded conversations for each other's shows, which felt like a nice bit of community building in itself. Here, Tom and I discuss his new career pursuits, his work with Sony Music, and conceiving of a cool video capturing the road Bob Dylan might have taken from Greenwich Village to Big Pink, getting Jeff Bridges to narrate that video, and also to join Facebook. A fascinating promo project about Jeff Buckley, bringing Fred Armisen together with members of The Clash for a Funny or Die bit, why he started Washed Up Emo, what emo even means these days, news about the latest season of this podcast of his, other future plans, and much more. A part of the Lionsgate Sound Network with the support of listeners like you who follow and subscribe to this listener-supported and donor-driven podcast. Spread the word about it. Leave nice reviews and ratings on your podcast platforms of choice, and make flexible monthly donations at patreon.com/creativecontrol, which is the primary and most reliable way for podcasters like me and Tom, really, to make a living. And in my case, where a monthly subscription of $6 American or its currency equivalent means you can access every single episode of this show in its entirety, which is not the case without that subscription. This one is fine. You can hear it at the $4 tier, ad-free on my Patreon, but you can also hear it with ads for free everywhere else. But again, you can learn more about how to support me and my work and all the different tiers at patreon.com/creativecontrol. Thanks for your support. Plus in-kind support from independent businesses like Pizza Trocadero, The Bookshelf, and Planet Bean Coffee in Guelph, Ontario, and Grandad's Donuts in Hamilton, Ontario. This is episode 897 of Creative Control, featuring the lovely and talented Tom Mullen, with your host, me, Vish Khanna. Hey, Tom, how's it going?
I am fantastic. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday to you. Where in the world are you today?
I am in Los Angeles, June gloom.
Los Angeles. What brings you there? Is that where you're living these days?
I am. Yeah, I was bi-coastal for about 10 years, going back and forth between California and New York because of jobs. I was working in the music industry for 20 plus years. And when COVID hit, I actually had a flight on the day after like it got announced, like things sort of got weird on the 11th. I had a flight for the 12th already booked, and I was at a Dashboard Confessional show with Get Up Kids opening in New York. It was packed, and I started getting text messages, and it was like, what are you doing? Like, what's going on? And I changed my flight to like 7 a.m. thinking that the world was going to shut down and I might as well get out while I could. I mean, it was doomsday kind of feelings. And I walked from Webster Hall all the way to Hell's Kitchen, which took me like an hour because I didn't want to get in a cab. Went home. Yeah. Got a mask, which I happened to have overnighted by somebody, and flew out and never went back to New York. I had two friends pack up my apartment that summer, and I've been out here ever since. And so, yeah, I kind of like forcefully moved out here, but then stayed.
Wow. And sorry, you haven't been back to New York since?
Actually, I was back for a Mets game like a year and a half ago, and then I was just back last month for Sunny Day Real Estate, and so got to see some friends, got to thank some people. I took out to dinner the two people that moved out my apartment, like sort of like housekeeping. It's like let me repay everybody's favor who helped me, during that time, and so it was really awesome to be back for a minute. And so I have been back, but because of COVID and travel and stuff like that, I've been sort of anchored here, which is fine with me.
Yeah. So beyond the washed up emo stuff that we're going to talk about, is there something else that occupies your time, particularly in Los Angeles these days?
Well, I mean, I had been in the music industry for 20 plus years, and probably toward the end of the second to last job, mental health really took its toll. Things that I was ignoring, things that I weren't expecting, and something really serious happened. And I didn't take the warning signs even then. And then ended up during COVID, same issues, which I don't want to get into, but happened again. And I was like, okay, I have to do a massive reset. And it was not only the career, but also like the trajectory. So I actually, after, I had worked at indie labels from Equal Vision Records to Vagrant to TVT Records, if anyone remembers that label, and then worked at majors like EMI before it got bought, Sony, all these places. And I just got so disenfranchised, so lost, and I reset and sort of stepped away after last job at Universal, which was a really rad job. I thought I was at the pinnacle. I had worked my career to kind of get to this point where I had a niche in catalog marketing, which overlaps with Washed Up Emo, because I'd always loved the storytelling of something in the past and getting someone new to understand.
Yeah.
And so when I'd done catalog at Sony, got to work with Dylan and Miles and all these people, and then do it at Universal, where I was the head of marketing. It was really awesome, but I just realized how far removed I was from the creative aspect.
Yeah.
And I just a little disenfranchised. So I left. And so actually, you know, this is, I guess, not public, probably the first time I've said this, but like I went back to school. I just finished my first year at USC to get a master's in social work to hopefully, when I'm done, be a social worker / therapist, psychotherapist for entertainment individuals. Because what I found is from research, there's not a lot of research on this. And also there's not a lot of specific people that are in this field that can understand and not be like amazed. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah.
Like you don't need to be like, and so I'm scared. I'm, you know, half sad that I left something that I'd spent so long working toward, but I only think it's only going to help when I finish that I can build on those relationships that I had for so long and be able to help in a way that probably feels more fulfilling than filling out a spreadsheet and making someone a lot of money, which I understand what it is. I understand what the corporate world is. It's okay. That's part of life. I just think I just took a left turn.
You know, first of all, I want to say I'm sorry you went through any kind of strife there and struggle, but I also want to say congratulations on coming out the other side. It sounds like you're a much happier person. I'll also say, well, there's a couple things I want to say. Let's not lose the thread on that Dylan and Miles stuff, because I want to follow up with you on that. That certainly intrigues me. But I will say you and I have a very similar trajectory. I think we have very similar trajectories in a lot of ways, coming from making or celebrating or witnessing a lot of underground music, and then kind of entering some aspect of the music business per se. In my case, more on the journalistic side of things than, you know, actually working for any of these labels and whatnot. But also, I think because of our work ethic, we were promoted. We were elevated to positions of, it sounds like for you, it was the same as me. You got into a position where you got into this work because you had a creative spark and you loved the creative aspects of it. But then, because as you get older and because of your experience, people are like, you know what? You should be in charge of stuff. And you're like, oh, okay. What does that mean? Well, it'll give you a lot more money, and but it's boring as hell. And it's not as creative as the stuff you actually like. And you're like, well, I guess that's okay. I'll try that. And then you do it for a while, and you're like, this isn't fulfilling or fun. Sorry, I'm putting words in your mouth. I guess I'm talking about myself. If I found out...
100% true.
Yeah, you just find out it's not fun, or that your passion, like the reason you got into it, it's sort of adjacent to the work. Like you're working with the music people in some regard, but you're doing a lot of like bullshit work, and it's not fun. So, like you, I'm currently also just like, I'm just going to try to explore my passions, even though I don't know what your family situation is, but I have kids and adult responsibilities. And so every other day I'm like, what the hell did I do? I gave up the job with the best money to just explore the stuff I actually like, because I guess fundamentally I didn't care that much about the money. But now every once in a while I'm like, I need the money. Anyway, sorry. Is anything I'm saying tracking with you? Does that resonate?
100%. Yeah, I get it. I got into these last few roles, and I think, again, I don't regret, but I think there's a few things along the way. Like none of these things would have happened. Like I don't do that. I don't go like, well, if that didn't happen, then this would have happened. It all happened for a reason. And I'm not even religious. I just feel like that's how it happens. But getting into those positions and starting to see how the sausage is made even further, I was like, oh man, I remember before my dad passed away, I remember telling him about one of the promotions I got. And he was like, as these happen and as you make more money, you know, there are more things on the line. There are more things that you're going to have to be responsible for that, you know, your boss probably deflected from you. And he was 1,000% correct. Like when things go wrong, guess what happens? The person that's in that position that made those decisions. And I started to see or remember other people in my career or my career path around the same age, either be okay and sit in a spot or jump around. Like people love to just jump and get, you know, have all these different jobs and they're really great at interviewing, or they have a change in management and the person has their person and it's no fault to anybody. And that just happens. So I don't have any anger or regret. I just think, I mean, I don't even drink. I don't even like party. And I was like, this is killing me. You know, like the late nights, the amount of stuff that, you know, that you're subjected to. And then my heart was like, well, there's all this creative stuff that I do. And like, that meant so much to me. And I had amazing moments with artists that, you know, you could pinch me and be like, are you kidding? Like I got to be able to be a part of them or part of their journey. But the thing I always remembered, which I think brings back to the punk rock side, or at least the DIY, is like, it's not about me. Like so many people tried to have it be about them.
Yeah.
And I always was like, this is about the artist that I'm working with. This is about their story. Like people would do interviews with me about stuff, you know, it would be in Billboard and I'd be like, okay, you got to interview somebody else too. Like go talk. Like I didn't like that. I didn't like feeling like I succeeded because Johnny Cash succeeded. No one is going to remember Tom Mullen. No one. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Like it's so that's where I really started to see the underbelly of the money and the, where people's egos and it just, yeah, it was time. And maybe we'd have a different conversation today because Washed Up Emo is never stopping. So it would always be around, but maybe I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm in Cannes right now and we're doing a film premiere. Maybe, but I don't think I would have been happy.
Yeah. I think part of why people like you and I enter these corporate or business realms that are, you know, pretty overground, mainstream or whatever. I don't know about you, but I always had the hope that I could elevate the stuff I really cared about using those platforms, if that makes any sense. Like,
Absolutely.
I think maybe our situations are different. For me, it was like, yes, I will work for Canada's national broadcaster, but I will do whatever I can to profile underground music using their... I'm not using it. Like I was encouraged to do that to some extent, at least initially. So it was sort of... It wasn't nefarious, but I was like, okay, I will write for these or work for these companies, but I'm only going to talk about stuff I actually care about and love, and I'm not as interested in them telling me, you know, can you do a listicle about Beyonce tour grosses, which was actually a request I had at one point, and I was like, no, I don't want to do that. Like that doesn't interest me at all. So yeah, it's this balancing act as you get, you know, like all adults, you have to you're asked to compromise yourself sometimes. And at this age, as I'm speaking to you today, Tom, I was just articulating this to some neighbors when we were just having a chat on the way back from dropping our kids off at school. I'm like, my threshold for phoniness and participating in phoniness is, if not the lowest it's ever been, completely zero. I just have no patience to like pretend I care about stuff. It's a real problem, I think, because it's the whole most of jobs and work is often pretending you care about shit you don't really care about, right?
I have such a hard time with bullshit meter. Like it is very hard for me to believe someone if they're full of it, and I can see through it pretty quickly. I don't know if that's just living in New York and a big city and you just get bombarded with, you know, chaos and people trying to rip you off. But also I think my empathy was also hard because I cared. And then when I realized, like, I'd have a meeting, right? And I'd be like, this is what's going on and blah, blah, blah. And then we'd have another meeting and I would hear that idea from someone else later. Yeah. And maybe someone else said it, or they said something in the meeting and then said something different elsewhere because their agenda was different than mine, and I gave up too much information selling my story. Like, it was like that game. My brain, my simple of like do right for the artist didn't connect as I got further up the chain, and I couldn't lose it. I think when you said like the listicles and things like that, like, I launched this thing for Jeff Buckley, and I'm happy to go into this. Is kind of explains that a little bit of like where they want to like rinse and repeat. Like, I came up with this idea. They had I was at Sony, and Jeff Buckley obviously is not around, but they have these archives and they go through them and they try to resell things or re-release things or find things and tell a story around it. And it was these covers. Yeah. And it was these covers that he did, and it'd never been released. And online, the hate was like, all you're doing is dredging the grave. And what are you doing? And I was like, we got to do something different. And I think what I realized is that when I tried to get through the layers, like basically there was a photo of his records on one of the panels of the vinyl, and I had the A&R person show me, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. What's that photo of? And they're like, oh, it's his record collection. I was like, what are you talking about? They still have his record collection? Yeah. I was like, can I talk to his mom? No, she's really busy, blah, 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 blah. Maybe we can do it later. So I had to wait like 2 weeks for a call. I'm in the last part of the meeting, and I chime in, hey, it was his mom and his sister. And I was like, hey, I have this idea. It's around his records. Do you still have his records? Blah, blah, blah. They were like, oh yeah, totally. And so this idea started to go. And then I had all these people tell me, no, it'll never happen. Why are you doing this? Basically, I back-end engineered Spotify on a website where you could look at his records as if they're sitting on a shelf, and you could search his record collection. So I cataloged 473 records or whatever it was. We built a website with a company that had never built something like this before because it didn't exist. And we came up with this way to be able to listen to his records with 30-second stream, so you didn't have the Spotify ad. So it would only give you 30 seconds. Oh, wow. And then you could click on it and then go to Spotify to listen to the whole record. So it was as if you were sitting with Jeff with his records. And what's amazing is, of course, he had Fugazi, he had Miles, he had Coltrane, he had all these like crazy records. And then it was fun to see ones he didn't have. Like, oh, why didn't he have 13 songs, but he had, the other Fugazi record? Did he lend it out to somebody and he never got it back? Like these stories. And it resonated like crazy. And people were like, this is me. Like, it resonated with the fan. They miss what do you miss when you hang out with someone that loves music, talking about records? Well, you got to sit with Jeff and do this. But let me tell you how many people told me no. And it cost $12,000. Like, that is an ad buy for someone's billboard for like half a day or something. Like, what happened? So when it launched, everyone was against it. Most people, except the close people that I got on board. This thing launched. It went gangbusters, and all these people talked about it, wrote about it, and it was like this rebirth of like his story. And it has when it was up, the website had a peak on his birthday and on the anniversary of his death. So people searched it out and found this website. What did the company want? They wanted to do it again and again and again. And they're like, why don't you do it with this artist? And I go, it doesn't work like that. It worked because of the story. And I just think like it's sort of what you probably see when a listicle does well, or whatever article did well. They want to rinse and repeat. And I'm already on to the next thing. I'm already like, let's try something new. So that's like the microcosm of like where I was like, oh man, like, yeah, it was. But I understand it's time, it's money, there's a lot more things involved, and it's not as happy-go-lucky as I envisioned. But I did feel like you said earlier about getting little wins, like getting that thing out there. Buckley, that's what people talk to me most about when they find out. Either they go to my website or they talk to me a while. They find that and they're like, how the hell did that happen? Right. And
yeah. And I think you and I, when you come from punk, which is all about ideas and trying things, it gets really demoralizing when you're placed in these entities that are also about music but are completely risk averse and don't want to try ideas. And meanwhile, I mean, this Jeff Buckley thing sounds incredible. You also, I think when you and I had a chat recently, you told me the story about coming up with this really great idea involving Big Pink, Bob Dylan's and the band's sort of the famous house where they made the basement tapes and hung out and stuff like that. Before we move on, I don't know if you want to speak to what I was just saying about freedom and trying things and how frustrating it is to then work for a big company that's in music but doesn't want to do those things. Can you, sorry, Tom, can you address that?
I can totally...
Yeah.
So the one you mentioned, the Bob Dylan one, is why all this happened. So I was doing digital marketing. I had left EMI doing digital marketing, which at that point was almost like what PR does now with getting websites and premieres. Like PR realized that their magazines weren't doing anything, so they started poaching online stuff. And I realized that and was like, okay, online's cool, but like I have all these ideas and crazy things to do. And I was at Sony, and I want to shout out all the people there that were really supportive of me. Like I basically told them like, hey, I'm really bored. Can I start like coming up with crazy ideas? And my boss was amazing. And they were like, yeah, like you need to do your job, but if you have these other ideas, like you can pursue them. So I'm in this massive, building in Sony, 550 Madison, before they moved downtown. And it's like massive building. And I'm in this giant conference room, giant chairs, and it's Dylan's management and all these executives. And there must have been 20 people in there. And I had talked to the product manager before, who I became friends with, and said, I've got this idea. I think, and he was very supportive of me, of like, I love this. Like, we just need to get it in front of Jeff, Rosen, the manager. And I'm in this giant meeting. And of course, like, I'm scared. I had literally sitting on my hands. Like, I just want to tell this idea in front of him because his time is very important. Like, Dylan wasn't there. Jeff is essentially, if he's in the room, Dylan's in the room. And I at the end of the meeting, there must have been a few minutes left, and I just chimed in. I said, Jeff, I've got an idea. I'd love to throw you. I said, what about if we recreated the trip to Big Pink and we retell the story from the liner notes and be able to tell that story in a time-lapse way, so it's the exact route that he took as if he was doing that. And I had said, I'm already reached out to the people that own the house. I've already, they're cool. And he was like, literally in the meeting, he goes, do it.
Yeah.
And I was like, fantastic. So what happened after? The video person was like, well, you need to get a jib and we got to follow you with a crane. And I go, no, I'm buying a GoPro at Best Buy right now. And I'm going to put it on my corporate card and I'm going to rent a car and I'm going to drive. And they were like, no, it needs to do that. They were trying to like make it like this. And I go, no, it's simple. And I had worked with Jeff Bridges, the actor, at Blue Note, which is part of EMI. I worked on his record release that he did with Blue Note. I worked with him day in and day out on digital marketing. We went to all these places and, to do tapings and interviews, and became just not friends, but just like I worked my ass off for him. I actually got him on Facebook. Side story, I was there like 9:00 at night and I get a call and it's from a California number. I'm like, oh shit, it's somebody from, West Coast calling me from the Capitol Tower. And it was Jeff. And he goes, why do I need to be on Facebook? That's the first word out of it. No, I think he said, hi, Tom. And he's like, why do I need to be on Facebook? And I was like, oh man, this is huge. I got to get him on Facebook. I go, it is a great way to promote your record, but also your passions, like your art and your, No Kid Hungry, all those things. Like, you can do that. He paused and was like, okay. And then he was on Facebook. So I got him on Facebook. That was great. But so we had this sort of, he trusted. And I think I worked my butt off to, work for his record, and that's all I did. And I just put my hands of it and said, great. Like, I didn't sit there and go, let me go to your house. Right. Not that point. But I was like, he's a huge Dylan fan. So I reached out to the manager and said, would Jeff narrate a Bob Dylan video about his trip to Big Pink? I got a response back in minutes. Yes. and did it for free.
Oh.
Like, literally, we did an ISDN. You know what ISDN is?
Yeah, for those listening, an ISDN connection is basically studio. In the parlance of the radio or broadcasting, you connect one studio to another to capture the audio well. Is that a way of putting it, Tom?
100%. It's as if Zoom was like next to each other. Like if you were standing next to each other, it is that quick. So we did an ISDN. He went up to a studio. I think he was in Santa Barbara or somewhere in California. I was on the East Coast. And what was fantastic is someone at Sony had us hook up with some folks at NBC. And I think it was the SNL guy, audio from SNL. But we like pulled some strings and got to be able to be in the studio to do it through a connection through Sony. And the only direction from his manager, which I don't think she'll be mad at me saying, she goes, I understand it's Jeff Bridges, but direct. And I was like, okay. Yeah. Okay. And so we got in there and I had a script and I had a lovely friend, ex-girlfriend help edit because I am too wordy, and she edited it down and was really helpful. And we just went through it, and it was like amazing to be able to hear him try and hey, is this okay? I'm going to try it this way. And like, it was this mind-blowing experience. And I was like, okay, like, and now I got to shoot this video. And so I rented the car, drove the same route from his apartment in the West Village, the same route that he would have gone all the way up to Big Pink. I ended up making friends with the person that owned the house, and we, got a friendship going. I sent him a bunch of records and was just really like, hey, I'm really trying to do this really cool video. And he understood that I was like, so this video comes out. The crazy part. So I got Dylan, did the time lapse. Dylan's on board to promote the, management and stuff. I wanted to premiere it on Facebook video. I got hell. Because why is this on YouTube? Why is this? Because Facebook hadn't launched their video platform. And I reached out to them and said, could we do like a big thing as you're ramping up this video platform? Could we do it there first and then put it on YouTube?
Yeah.
So we did. It got 500,000 views on Facebook in like 48 hours. I think Facebook was lower because we were pushing all the traffic to Facebook. We ended up doing really well on YouTube as well. And after that, I got a meeting with these two people, the GM and my boss, and they were like, could you do that again? And my job changed.
Oh.
My job changed. I had a role that ended up, I think they still have it. When I left, someone took the role, but I basically came up with this role of creative partnerships and marketing where I connected dots of things and relationships and digital, right? Like finding the platform to launch it on, the idea, the talent, and to be able to do that. So ended up, one of the other ones was doing it with Miles Davis. We also did one with Fred Armisen with Funny or Die around the Clash, where he pretended to be, bigger than the Clash. And it was amazing. And I just think I found my like zone where I could get people to talk about these records that, again, you have to convince a younger audience, not just the fan that's going to buy the box set. Like, why would you stream The Clash again? Why would you stream Dylan again? I saw this cool video. I didn't know he took that trip. Like, Jeff Bridges is doing it. That's cool. So that is where I had this sweet spot. And it ended up, I also brought podcasting to Sony at that time, which was still the pivot to video days in 2013, 2014, 15, like that was still early days. So it was very fun. Long story short, like it changed my life. And also so hearing someone, say, go do it. And by the way, I think it cost $2,500 all in, everything we did.
I interrupt this episode of my own show for a brief thank you for hearing my call to support me and my work on Patreon. We have seen a lot of growth in Patreon support over the last little while, which is amazing because that's my primary source of income these days. And I love doing this job that I invented for myself a whole lot. Kreative Kontrol is a listener-supported podcast. Do podcasters receive any streaming royalties from podcast platforms? No, not any. Does podcast advertising pay the bills? Not for a show at this scale, no. Do all podcasters get paid by companies for their work like some celebrities do? No, most of us do not. We do this work to support our communities and because we love it. So what's the most reliable source of income for podcasters like me? Crowdfunding platforms like Patreon. So if you love Creative Control with Vish, Khanna and want to see it continue, please see the notes in this episode. Click on the link that takes you to my Patreon and its different donation tiers with various incentives and benefits, and support me and my work today. Thank you again so much. That's an amazing story. And I want to say, like, despite the fact that we're talking about Sony Music, giant multinational corporation, talking about a very, very, very iconic and established artist like Bob Dylan, everything else you're describing, from I'm going to rent a GoPro and drive myself and capture this myself, to Jeff Bridges saying I'm in and doing it for free, all of these are markers of the spirit and communal aspects of punk rock. So what I was getting at earlier is, I think people like you and me who are steeped in punk end up in these roles. And that, what I think you did there, if I might, Tom, is bring a punk rock sort of idea, bring it about, in a punk rock way, like bring about an idea for a big entity, a couple of big entities really, and make them all a little more punk. So I don't know if that resonates with you. Does that make sense to you?
It does.
Yeah.
The sentiment changed toward Dylan. I feel from looking at, we have data to look at, and I don't remember all of it, and there's a lot of people involved. Like, I had to, the other part about it, which I think goes back to punk, is I needed to advocate, but also bring people with me.
Yeah.
I could not just say my idea. I remember my ex-girlfriend doing like, say we a lot.
Yeah.
Say we. I know it's your idea. I know you want to get this through, but say we.
Yeah.
And I had trouble with that because I had this new job, or I was trying to get this, new thing I was trying to get off the ground. And I just think from the Jeff Bridges Dylan thing to the Jeff Buckley, like, I had to get people on board, and probably getting Jeff Buckley's mom, like, she called me after it came out and she said, Jeff would have loved this.
Oh, that's lovely. That's the best.
Like,
yeah.
I was like, I'm good. I don't care about any of the awards this thing's getting. I don't care. Like, if she said Jeff would have loved that, like, I'm done. And then, with Dylan, like, that started a relationship where we did a bunch of other things. We did a website where we talked about the recording of Like a Rolling Stone. We made this huge website around a box set. It won at Cannes. It won all these awards. And it was, again, it people said the word Dylan in a different way.
Yeah.
Like, he won a website award. He won a Clio for music marketing. Or with Miles, right? We built this website with Robert Glasper. We did two things with Miles. We built one with Robert Glasper where he remixed and like re-recorded a bunch of Miles stuff from the studio that was unreleased, and then made a record. And we basically built like a turn on and off the stems, and then he told videos on how he did it. So we did that. We also did one where you could see the influence of Miles Davis across Wikipedia. And so we built this data visualization with this guy, Matt Daniels, who runs a site called Pudding. It was called something else before, but you can look up Pudding. And we built this data visualization of showing his influence across Wikipedia, not just the world, but like Wikipedia,
oh, wow.
Which people were like, this is crazy. Like, you could click on any of the bubbles. It's still live. Happy to send you a link, and we'll have you link in the description, but it's like, you could click on anything, like, let's say Paris, and it would have the size of the bubble was based on how many mentions of Miles. It's more in depth than this. It's actually pretty intense to look through, but that told a story. When did I do that? It was for a birthday anniversary. So instead of just posting a photo and saying happy anniversary, I was like, let's show on his birthday how influential he is still to this day across one of the most trafficked websites in the world.
Yeah.
And those are like, that's it. Like, I don't know. I respect so much about music, and I respect the craft, and I respect people's art and putting themselves out there. And I guess my fault is I care too much. And I think it's also the benefit. Like I care enough where I forget the politics, and I care so much that this thing comes out and maybe I put too much of my soul into it, or I put too much of my heart where I might have lost some things along the way. But that's really like, so it's funny. People know me for work, and then they find out about Washed Up Emo, or they have no idea that I have been in the industry for so long doing stuff, because I've been doing Washed Up Emo since 2007. So it's fun. I'm able to do that. But I really think the punk thing you talked about and where this ethos goes is, I just hope other people understand that as they go along. And we know whatever job you're in, whatever career, you're going to hit those barriers where a coworker, a boss, or home life or things. And I just think I've been able to ground myself a little bit better with that punk ethos to be able to make better decisions. Yeah. And I still am learning. I'm still learning today, like that's where I think it resonates the most about, and I can feel it. Like I can feel the punk coming in and trying to like stem it back, like be cool, like,
yeah. No, and I appreciate that. And I want to get into Washed Up Emo in just a moment. A couple of quick things. I've also been to Big Pink.
Yes.
Once in the year 2000. And it was a huge thrill to see this house. And we didn't approach it or anything. We just, took some pictures outside of it. And you alluded to something that before we get to Washed Up Emo, I feel like it's worth following up upon because a relatively recent guest on this show was Fred Armisen. And you talked about this amazing thing on Funny or Die featuring Fred in character with a couple of members of The Clash. I'm sorry to do this to you, Tom, to keep asking you to tell stories from your music industry life, but come on. That's a notable... I saw that and I was like, holy shit. Like Mick Jones, I never really see him do any press or any kind of appearances anymore. Paul Simonon tends to do some stuff because of Gorillaz and whatever, but I was just shocked by this whole thing. So please, can you tell the people listening at home more about that piece of film and how it came about and your role in it?
Yes. And I do have a funny story about Big Pink that I can tell after, where I got a local cornered us when we showed up. It was very funny.
Yes. Well, that's what we were getting. I will say that we would ask people, and I have it all on tape somewhere. I was sort of audio taping these encounters surreptitiously, which I guess I shouldn't have been doing at the time, but I was a kid. We were just trying to document everything. And I'd be like, do you know where, we're trying to find Big Pink. And they're like, get out of here, you Canadians. Go home, leave those people alone. That's what we got. So anyway, sorry.
Yeah, if you watch the video, I edit the ending so you can't actually find it. I know you can find it on Google, but I didn't want to make it so obvious because there's about 17 different turns. So I did cut that. But then when we showed up, we were there a little bit early before the owners were there. And this guy shows up and he's like, what are you doing? Yeah. And I was like, oh, I'm here to meet, I'm not going to say the person's name that owns the house, but we were there to see them. And then he shows up and he's like, I forget the guy's name. He's like, get out of here. Like Tom's fine. Like it was very funny. It's just like, he was protecting, but we were completely fine to be able to do that. And then at the end of the video, the door opening is actually the owner of the house helping us because I said, what if I drive up to the driveway, and because I got to the same position in the car and I backed up all the way and I drove in again. I can see the cut. No one can, like where I spliced it in, but he's the one opening the door to kind of like bring you into the story. So yeah, anyway, that's the fun thing. But Fred, so I love SNL. I used to stay up late to watch, and I knew he was in Trenchmouth and had this past, and I knew he was punk. And then I started seeing some of these clips, right? The wedding house band where they were Crisis of Conformity. Like I was like, oh man. And then the Ian Rubbish character. Yeah. And basically we had this Clash box set that, for people that don't know, like these box sets come out and they add like 5 things or 2 things, and then they say it's another anniversary and you go and buy it again. I understand they might put a poster in. Sometimes they're better than others. This one was essentially a repackaging for the US that had come out in the UK, if I remember correctly. It was actually pretty cool. It was in this like boom box.
It was all CDs, right?
Yeah. Oh, did they do a vinyl version? I can't remember. I think it was all CDs. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it wasn't really like, there wasn't like a lost track or anything. I was just like, and this was after Dylan. This was after Miles. This was after I was like, man, or maybe it wasn't after Miles. I think it was after Dylan. And I was like, man, what do we do with this thing? And I just thought, well, I know Fred's like a crazy fan. Like, what if I literally the email to Funny or Die, who I had connected with through punk, by the way. That's how I met those guys, because of punk rock. Yeah. I was like, what if Fred does Ian Rubbish in front of the Clash? Wouldn't that be funny? And literally, I'm not telling you, 5 minutes later, an email back from Funny or Die that had forwarded it to Fred, and it just said yes. I had no idea what we were going to do. Now, what took the longest? Convincing, and this is, I love the Clash management. I love everybody I worked on it with it. It was just, I had to explain Fred Armisen to the UK because they didn't understand that he was like funny.
Yeah.
Like, I had to send Portlandia links. I had to send SNL clips. I had chats with them about his humor and this character. And it was a lot of education, which is part of getting a story across. And then again, the company's like, I don't really know. We don't have any money for this. This cost $0. Fred did it on his own dime. Funny or Die helped out, and we ended up doing it at Electric Lady Studios. It took a lot of convincing, and right before it started, I was told, "Oh, we only have an hour," and I was like, "Oh my god, they have no idea." Like, you guys understand we're recording like a 10-minute clip? Like, that doesn't happen in an hour. What I realized was I needed to get to the band, so I had Fred meet them and chat a little bit, and it was very cordial. And then we start recording, and if you watch the video, I don't think they realize he's doing a character. I think they think he's serious. And so halfway through, they started to get in on the joke and started to like do some of the funny lines, and it was such an amazing day. They ended up staying for hours to do it and finish it. And there was a couple interesting tidbits. There was them recording at the end, playing that little "Hey Policeman" song. There's actually, Fred started playing a Clash song, and the band played along for about 5 seconds and then stopped. And Fred got embarrassed because he tried to get him to do like a Clash song with him. But it was very sweet. And so Fred is, they said goodbye. I think they had another interview to do, and I was doing a lot of stuff with them that week. I was the the digital marketing person for them, so we had a lot of stuff. So they left, but before they left, I had them sign a box set that said "To Ian and to Fred," signed, the Clash. And Fred didn't know this, and so the band left. He said goodbye. I waited like 20 minutes. Fred's getting out of his costume and his hair and stuff, and I go, "Fred, I just want to let you know the guys left something for you." And I handed it to him, and he might have a different story, but I remember him being very touched and very happy to he saw them like in New York City back in the day. Like, he waited in line. Like, this was one of his, so that to me was half the, I was doing it for Sony. I was doing it for the Clash. I was doing it for the box set, but also Fred took his time. Like, how can I make him feel really good about this? And doing it kind of without him knowing. And so, that video was gangbusters. People flipped out, Billboard. There's an Instagram account that I became friends with. They take clips from it, and he loves Washed Up Emo. Oh, and I always when he first posted it, I was like, "Do you realize I did this?" Or I was like, I helped kind of come up with this, and he's like, "No." And I sent him the Billboard article. I was like, "Dude, yes." And so now he tags Washed Up Emo whenever he posts a clip from that little skit or whatever. So again, I guess I want everybody happy. I think that's my downfall. I want everybody happy and no one mad. And I think the band was stoked. Management was happy. They understood. It really helped, Clash, kind of have a funny moment. And it was a really beautiful beautiful time. So I know it was a long story, but it was just so many things. When people say yes so quickly, it wasn't taking advantage. It was more of like, I know they're excited. I need to make this happen.
Yeah.
I have to get everyone in this building to get this done.
Yeah. I feel like this spirit of telling stories and helping people find their agency if they don't really have it, or, you know, platforming people, if you will. I feel like this is all tied into your work with Washed Up Emo. So maybe this is a nice enough segue into talking about the show and the enterprise, where it came from, what motivated you to do it, and maybe where you feel like it's going. Can we do a Christmas story, past, present, and future?
Oh, absolutely.
About Washed Up Emo and how this came about, Tom?
Yes. Yeah, and happy to. And I think it does overlap, and I think there's misconceptions about the word, right?
Yeah.
There's misconceptions about emo, what it is, what it means, its history, and there's a lot of revisionist history. Pitchfork, to throw one out there, you know, they score records that they, you know, basically buried, you know, back in the 2000s and because people take their numbers for real, not anymore because it's dead, but before they would put a number on a record and say, sorry, this is what it is now. The damage was already done. So those things were happening a lot. And I was at Equal Vision Records, which was one of probably my favorite label growing up. And I was running marketing for them, and I had connected with them through working at the college radio station. We started working with them, and I realized, you know, man, people are forgetting emo from the 90s and 80s. Like, I'm searching online and there's nothing. And one of the first taglines of Washed Up Emo was, I forget the exact wording. I have a screenshot of the old GeoCities site, but it's basically like, I typed emo into a search engine and nothing came up. That's why I started the website. Like, literally searching emo in Yahoo or Alta Vista or whatever else was coming out, nothing came up. Very little. Forfa was there, which was a very simple website that explained the history in like a few paragraphs, and it was I think it's still up, but that was it. And so I just started a blog spot and started typing about bands I'd loved and talking about them and saying, this band's really cool, you should check them out. And then slowly 2007 started, like 08, 09, it was heavy third wave, you know, the pop era. And so I was very angry, you know, it was just like, no one's talking about Sunny Day. No one's talking about, you know, anything from the 80s. Like, it's as if emo started in 2007. Like, I was very angry while also being at a label that had bands headlining Warped Tour. So it was very funny, but I kept with it and didn't stop, and slowly, you know, started to gain steam on Twitter and whatever social platform. And it was, you know, I would talk about a record or talk about stuff. And then whatever social network came out, I was on it. I, you know, was able to, you know, learn about it and start using it and connect with people. And it started to just flourish. Like, people would come to me and, what are you listening to? Or bands would do, like, I would just post a band on Twitter or whatever the platform was, and the band would call me and say, we just got like X amount of followers, like in 12 hours. What happened?
Right.
You know, it was very cool. So slowly I started to expand just the website, did social media. And then in 2011, I was full-time in New York City. Equal Vision was in Albany, New York. And I was down in New York City again. And I was like, let's do, you know, a DJ night. Like, we have all these records, and a couple friends had the same idea. We're on this like text thread, and we're like, let's try it. And we did it on Valentine's Day. It was like an anti-Valentine's Day, and people showed up. It was unreal.
Oh, nice.
It was a bar. It was like a super small bar. It was a friend's bar. We were downstairs, and all these people came out. And from that day forward, we did it either once a month or twice a month for 9 years, up until February 2020.
Oh,
so we ended up doing it. So it was consistent. It was around. And again, there's a lot more stories to talk about Emo Night. There's a lot of publicists that will tell stories about who was first and who wasn't. I'll let everybody know that it started a lot way before us. There was a night in Philly. There's a night in San Francisco that started in 2009 called Diary. There's a lot more. And there's too many high profile PR people that are going to say certain ones are larger. But a lot of these ones started, and I think that connected me with a lot of bands because they would just show up after a show.
Yeah.
They would be like, oh, we're going to come down. And so that got out that if there's a show in town and we have a DJ night, the band's going to come and hang out and DJ or play or just drink. And so people would just come, and it was always free, always requests. And it was a way for people to meet. People met and got married. People met at the night and had families. Like, it was very like people would come every single month. And people came from Brazil once. People came from Canada, actually. People from Canada. People came from the West Coast, Chicago. It was very, very fun. So that happened. And then the podcast was like a little bit after 2012, where I realized, again, loading up Apple Podcasts, being like, why aren't my heroes being interviewed?
Yeah.
Where is all this? And then I just started. I had a crappy USB mic, which you would have hated, and it was just horrible. And I didn't know how to edit. And I just started asking friends and bands that I'd worked with at Equal Vision or college radio, and just said, hey, you want to talk? And the biggest aversion was the word. If I named my podcast anything else, I think it would be my full-time job. I just think there was such an aversion for the word, for people to come on, that like I had multiple times where people would be like, what is this?
When has anyone who has been ascribed as being emo appreciated the term? Like, I'm trying to think, like you and I had a chat about this, and
a handful.
When the term kind of sort of emerged in the 80s, the band, like people like Ian MacKaye and other Discord bands like maybe Rites of Spring were ascribed this term. And Ian MacKaye in particular on stage once said it was the stupidest fucking thing he'd ever heard. But then you're talking second, third wave. I think people kind of embraced it. And then we had the thing, I don't know if you follow basketball. I think you do. Jimmy Butler.
I do.
Jimmy
Go
Butler
Celtics.
shows up.
Yes, Jimmy
as
Butler.
emo Jimmy Butler. And I'm like, emo Jimmy Butler. But then I'm like, oh, he's doing the... I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with the whatever younger wave of emo band. My son does this impression of what he thinks an emo band is, and he sings some band's lyrics, and I don't know if it's My Chemical Romance or something like that. Is that one of those bands? I don't even know. But
it is third wave, yeah.
So anyway, my point is that the term has always
Does he say, I miss you?
Yes, that is what he says. Yes.
Exactly. See, I knew that. Yeah. He's doing a Blink-182 song.
Right.
Which is Where Are You? Yeah.
That's the one he does. You nailed it right away. This was like you Shazammed my emo thing from my son. That was incredible. Yes. He does it in a weird faux British accent, and I'm like, I don't even know what song that is because I never followed that Blink-182, Anyway, my point is this.
Yes, so
that term has always felt a little divisive and confusing, right?
Yes. Always. And so what's funny about your son doing that is what was on the radio, right? That was right before My Chem, or that was right after Fall Out Boy. And hats off to all those bands that broke, and hats off to them for utilizing MySpace, Friendster, message boards that were better than the earlier waves, or were just ahead of, in the digital sense of how to market themselves. Hats off. I just think it had such an effect on the understanding of the word that anyone writing about it will go to the tropes because of clicks and marketing. And especially the third wave, of course, they're going to go on these tours now because there's a mass audience, which they should. They're allowed to go on a large tour and play arenas and sell them out. What's hard is I know that they're bringing on, like Fall Out Boy brought Jimmy, Eat World, which was great. Another bands, I know My Chem did the same thing in Australia with them. They understand it's the fan base that kind of has this sort of like, I listened to them and then I moved on to the next genre. There's people that listen to a song, an album, or a band. Yeah. I'm more on the band people. And I think and that's going to happen with anything. It just happened to happen with this word. Yeah. So the word, when I reach out to people, they get offended by washed up. They go, I'm not washed up. And then they're like, I'm not emo. I'm in this phase, or I'm in this era. And it's okay. And I think when they see the artist list, or they see the people I've interviewed, or they see the website, they see the books, it's been able to soften over the years. But there's people that I asked for 10 years and finally they came on.
What is,
it would just be like, I had a saved email.
Yeah. Where does the washed up part come from?
I don't know. I came up with it, and the website was available. It was basically me saying, like I want to talk about the emo before the third wave.
Right.
Like, I know a lot of people do elder emo now. They say I'm elder emo. That's third wave people thinking they're old. I say ancient emo now, but it's sort of, that's the idea that it was sort of like, I'm washed up, and it's a horrible name. I'm telling you, I should have named it anything else.
Yeah.
And it would have been better, but I do also like that it's on the nose so much that I have no regrets. Like you understand what you're doing when you come on the show, right? I mean, there's bands that come on and they're like, I'm only talking about emo with you, right? Yeah. I'm only going to do that because I know that I don't have to explain anything. And I think there are a lot of great podcast interviews, video stuff now on YouTube that people are starting to tell larger stories. And I do find that the kids, and I mean people younger and older that get into music and scenes, they're finding this and they're able to dive really deep, which what happens after you see a show or you read an article? I'm going to go to YouTube. I want to find another thing.
Yeah.
I want to find another article. I think what Washed Up turned into is people over the early years of it, 2013, 14, like people would find it and I could look at the stats and they listened to every episode.
Yeah.
And they were just like devouring this info. And that's when I knew we were okay.
Yeah.
Me meaning like the genre is going to stay alive. Like people will continue to iterate on the sound. I just want to keep the understanding that there's all these waves matter.
Yeah.
Equally.
Yeah.
And that the genre and the music. So that's really the whole point. And then the last thing was like book publishing. I thought, would it be rad if people could read the podcast and I could be in a library one day, and that's literally what happened. And I put it out and it sold out in like a month.
Yeah.
And did volume 2. So it was just sort of like, I'm scared every day about, putting myself out there, but it is amazing to see people, especially younger people, want to learn versus I only want to listen to this one band. I'm more for the people that like come to me and say, what should I listen to? Or I saw your playlist, or I saw this, like, what else should I listen to? And I love getting to share something new to listen to from a new band or an older band that they might not have, found. And then people share stuff with me that I missed, which I love too. I got schooled like a few weeks ago and I was like, I never listened to this band. I am so dumb. Right. And that's the best part about it.
What was the band?
I don't think I gave Jawbox a chance back in the day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think Bob Nana was like, you need to revisit X, Y, and Z. And I did. And I was like, okay, that was stupid. I don't know why I didn't do that. Like, just, so yeah, very like, I think, and again, every day I wake up, like, I'm like I just got emails this morning of bands sending me records through Washed Up Emo, and they're telling me their influences. And it's like really rad to kind of see this thing that people said it was dead, right? Whenever these articles come out about emo, it's always like, it's back. It never left. Yeah. It's always been here. And I think that's what my whole goal is. And I feel we're there. I just think a lot of the pop, what we talked about, the larger corporations, like they need to sell clicks. They need to sell, certain things that have a threshold that I'm a little bit under the radar. Or not me personally, but like the bands that I like are a little bit more under the radar. So I focus on those more than, if I post another meme with this band, I know it'll be big, but I don't really feel good about doing that. I'd rather leave that to someone else.
Yeah. You've had an impressive guest list throughout the course of making your show. Is there anyone, but you also alluded to the fact that sometimes it could be difficult for people to get certain people, perhaps because of the name of the show. Let's put it out there. Is there anyone that you've always wanted to have on the show that you haven't yet? I know, sorry, this can be a difficult question. Sometimes people ask me this and it's really hard to pin down one or two people, but I'm going to take a chance anyway. Is there anyone out there that you'd like to talk to that you haven't yet for this show, Tom?
I mean, Fred would be ridiculous, honestly. Fred, I think, would be fun because we have a little bit of a history.
Yeah.
A lot of actors and comedians and people like that know punk or know hardcore, I think would have fun getting to talk about music and from someone that understands the entertainment world. So I think that's exciting. And then from the music side, Jeremy Enig would be fantastic. I've probably spent, he knows, the band knows, everyone knows. One day it'll happen.
Okay.
Because I think, Yeah. I just think it'll be somewhere safe and somewhere that they can be themselves. And that's where it literally led me on the journey of doing, hopefully in this other career that I've never announced before. By the way, I've never told anybody that I'm doing this, but I hope that I've had so many people come on and say that felt good. I feel better. I am so glad to talk to you. I never talked about those things before. We're talking with someone, Danny Pound from Vitreous Humor. They were on Crank Records and stuff. Like he came on the show and we were hanging out and talking, and he didn't have his master's, and the label heard and sent him his master's.
Oh,
like that kind of stuff.
Nice.
Like because he heard his story, they ended up doing that. Or bands come on. Like I had Jeff Farina from Karate, and like I had him on in 2014, and I think I edited it out, but I was like, is Karate ever going to get back together? And I think he was like, hell no. Right. It was just fun. I like the time and moment. And also the biggest part about it, I love that it's evergreen.
Yeah.
Like someone could go back and listen to the Farina one. Yes, that they're back now and they've doing tours and they've had all these reissues, but it's fun to listen to it in that time period or that moment. And those are probably the most rewarding things that I hope that people come on or realize that it's not just me going like, emo. I actually am more interested in what they're doing now and how that relates to their upbringing, and less about like, I don't do like, what's your favorite track?
Yeah.
Like what's your, it's not interesting. It's not, it's like everyone else does that. I'd rather be like, what are you worried about right now? Or what are you working on that you're fucking so passionate about that? Like, what would you be doing if you're not sitting here with me?
Yeah.
Right? Like, what would you be doing right now if you didn't have to sit with me? And you get to have really in-depth conversations. And I think that means more to me with someone. And so, yeah, long answer, but there's definitely some people, I'd say Enig and, some comedians and artists that are outside of music that I think go to these shows or love this music that would have fun. I've had some comedians on and art and actors and stuff, but I think that would be a really fun realm because they don't get to talk about that stuff like in depth.
Yeah, no, that's cool. And I've had those experiences, and it is always nice to get maybe someone outside of music or someone outside of comedy to have, to provide a perspective on other art forms. So I think that's cool. If people want to learn more about your work in general or follow you on, the internet, Tom, where would you like to send them?
WashedUpEmo.com or any on the socials have WashedUpEmo as the thing. There's a way to submit music, and then the podcast is easy to find, just WashedUpEmo. And then the books, washedupbooks.com is where I have the 2 anthologies. And then Matt Pryor from the Get Up Kids, he wrote a memoir, and that was my first non-anthology series that came out last fall. Mm-hmm. And that's been doing really well. So really love the book publishing, love the storytelling. And so those are the 2 places. And the thing is share music and share it with people, and people will write back, and don't give up on, if someone doesn't write back, or keep making music. And kind of, I don't know, bands would write me and I would listen to them, and later they'd get signed and I would write them back and they're like, you were one of the first people to write me back. Right. Mm-hmm. Or like, those are cool things that I think resonate. So share music with me and I'll happily listen to it, and doesn't have to be emo. You can share stuff. People always write, I'm sorry, this isn't emo. That's like, I should have that as like the auto correct. Like people just write that. So
yeah, well, it can be a confusing term. Before I let you go, it's as Tom and I are speaking, everyone, it's basically mid-June. Are there future, and sorry, the one thing I'll say, Tom, is I'm as looking at your website, the last episode of your show, I believe, was published on April 29th. Did you want to give us a little sense of what's coming up? I don't know if you do these seasonally per se, but do you want to give us a sense of what's coming up next for you and the show?
There's a lot. I've done a lot of interviews probably in the last couple months, and I think school took my brain for a little bit. Yeah. And I had to focus. And I had some personal stuff here that I needed to take care of that was beyond serious and, needed to be there. And I think I have a lot of episodes that this summer will kick back up, and from artists, yourself as well. Yeah. Which I think will continue to tell stories from people that are huge and bands that no one's heard from in a long time, and it's their first interview ever. So yeah, I feel one on I tease Seosin. I've got a couple guys from Seosin. I have, where is it? Dave Neesmith from Bats and Mice coming up. The guys in Paulson. John Stanier from Helmet, one of my favorite bands of all time.
Nice.
So those are probably a few of the ones that are coming up.
Yeah. No, I didn't mean to pry. If you'd asked me that, I'd be like,
I actually love explaining.
I'm not telling you nothing. I don't know yet. I mean, you never know sometimes, right? When you're going to put something out or whatnot. Yeah.
I don't know how you do it, but I decide on Sundays. I wake up and I look at my list and I go, I'm going to do this one today. And because I don't know. And it's probably, I don't know. Someone will tell me it's wrong, but I always felt
I have a record store sponsorship now where I get record store credit for
you get credit
for my episodes. And what I try to do is I give them everything a month at a time. I say, here's what's coming up. It's May. Here's what I've got coming up in June.
That's smart.
And
That's smart.
I'll put question marks beside anything that hasn't been recorded yet, but everything that doesn't have that, it's happening. And that's been working well for my own organization. I mean, I sometimes I tweak things, or every once in a blue moon, an interview doesn't actually occur, so I have to modify things. But yeah, just to answer your question, I work about in month-long chunks, and definitely record things. I've got 2 months worth of episodes recorded. Does that make sense? I think that makes
absolutely.
sense. Yeah, so I'm always working ahead. I guess I'm working ahead. Yeah.
Oh, that's the thing. I feel like I'm working ahead, and also like I would rather have something ready versus going to find something, because then I feel like it loses a little bit. I don't want to go find. I'd rather, not saying I want to be wanted. I'm just saying like I'd rather do a lot of work ahead of time to have, like, it's kind of like studying before a test. I'd rather have a lot of info in my head before.
Oh yeah, I mean it's anxiety inducing to do. For me, by the way, I do this every week, so I'm not taking any breaks at the moment. So if I don't have some, it calms my anxiety to know I have a bank of things to draw from. So I'm not like, what the hell am I doing? Like
I know.
So yeah. That's how I feel about it. Anyway, Tom Mullen, it was a joy to speak to you again. And again, everyone check out Washed Up Emo. You can learn more about it at washedupemo.com. Tom, really a pleasure to have this another conversation with you. It's been nice to encounter you and meet you, and I wish you the best of luck in the future. Thanks again for your time.
Absolutely, and we got to thank Holmes for connecting us.
Yes.
Making the dreams happen.
Yes. There you have it. Once again, now that I'm just talking to you, the listener, thanks again to Tom Mullen for being on the show. Thanks again also to, we've alluded to Mr. Holmes there. Steve Holmes from American Football connected us, so thank you, Steve. And thanks to all of you for listening to this, the 897th episode of Creative Control, which is part of the Lionsgate Sound Network and is available wherever you get your podcast pretty much. If you can't locate an episode that you've heard about and you're looking for and you don't know where it is, please visit vishkhanna.com and you should be able to find that and learn more about me. Also, click on the hyperlink text that says follow Vish online to follow me on various online things if you want to. Also, please visit patreon.com/Creative Control to make a flexible monthly donation to keep this podcast going. There are different tier amounts. At $1 a month, you get access to my weekly newsletter. $4, you get access to that, plus every other episode ad-free and earlier than everybody else. At $6, you get all of that, but you get every single episode ad-free. And you also get exclusive bonus content. $10, all of the above or below. And you get entered into our monthly prize pack draws. And there's more advantages as you go up the tiers. And this is my main job. So if you enjoy the show and want to support me and keep it going, and that's pretty much all there is to it. Please consider supporting me and my work at patreon.com/Creative Control. Thank you so much. I also want to thank some independent businesses, namely Pizza Trocadero, The Bookshelf, and Planet Bean Coffee in Guelph, Ontario, and Granddad's Donuts in Hamilton, Ontario, for their in-kind support for this show. Thanks as always to Jim Guthrie for lending me some music for the show. You can learn more about him and his work at jimguthrie.org. And finally, thank you so much for listening to this episode with Tom Mullen from Washed Up Emo. Check out his podcast and his work, the books, all that stuff. Very interesting and kind fellow. It was lovely to meet him. So thanks again to Steve from American Football for connecting us. And thanks to you for subscribing to this podcast or following it. Maybe leaving a nice rating or review if you feel compelled to do so. That seems to help with some sort of algorithmic business to get the show some prominence on the whatever the platforms are. But mostly just telling your friends about the show helps. Then they trust you, they like you, and you say, oh, I like this show. They say, oh, I like you. I'm going to listen to that show you like. And then they'll either not talk to you ever again or move in with you. It depends on your level of friendship and their enjoyment of this show. There's a lot of factors at play there. Anyway, thanks for helping spread the word about the show and listening to it. I will talk to you very soon. Bye for now.